Hi, welcome everyone to our next episode of our podcast. And today we're talking with Oz Merchant from Viably, right? I spell it right? Viably.
Viably, yes.
Viably, yeah, because this website is run Viably, and yeah, okay, amazing. And we talk about the things that about running capital for e-commerce business. And I personally, when I was in the shoes of the Amazon seller, I had a lot of issues, and it's a subject that we hear a lot. And I hope it will be very interesting. And please hit the like and subscribe button. And so, welcome, Oz. Can you give us short introduction? Where are you coming from? How you end up being in this space? And yeah, where are you coming?
Sure, absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, Oleg. I've been actually, so interestingly enough, I consider this kind of my third chapter. So my first chapter or first act was essentially retail, wholesale, manufacturing. Second act was in high tech, and this third act is becoming what I call a kind of a culmination of the two, where it's commerce and technology coming together. And that's really been kind of the focus with what we're doing with Viably, which is really around banking and funding for e-commerce sellers, whether you're selling on Amazon, Shopify, Walmart, eBay. It's really helping those businesses scale up and depending where they wanted to go, whether they're looking for an exit at some point, whether they want to just continue and just have a nice, profitable, healthy cash flow business, that's great too. So whatever is kind of the right goal for that particular entrepreneur and their journey on kind of their scaling up the business.
Okay, amazing. So, what do you think from your experience is like right time to take external capital, or like there is some stages probably you need to take something a little bit like in startups you have like seed round, round A, round B. Do you have something similar in the e-commerce financing?
So what we find in e-commerce, it's such a capital intensive business to be in e-commerce. You can start off very inexpensively. We see a lot of folks that will start off doing retail and online arbitrage, which requires less amount of capital, but you can kind of get started with just a few dollars and start scaling up. And then we'll see people migrate from that into doing some more wholesale, where the order sizes get bigger, and that's where you start needing larger amounts of capital, all the way to folks that are doing private label and kind of building on their own brands. And for that, you're needing not only the capital for kind of launching new products, doing restocks, but also all the ad spend to drive traffic to your particular product that you're kind of competing with. So, anywhere in that journey, you're going to need capital at different amounts and different times. Now, when is the right time to take capital? That really depends on kind of where you're at in your own kind of life cycle of that business. Meaning, if you're very early on, there's a lot of mistakes you're making, and you can take money, and that may help, but the ROI on that money won't be nearly
Mm.
as good as when you kind of hit that sweet spot. Meaning, if you are at a point where you haven't figured out your ad optimization and you can kind of just dump more money on it and you'll generate the sales, but is it the best ROI for in use of that dollar? So, there may be times where, there's inefficiencies if you're doing, your own warehousing and fulfillment. Can you basically optimize any of those areas so that when you take outside capital, you're actually getting a far, far better return? So typically we see, in the early days, you want to kind of learn from your own capital mistakes and stuff as you get to a point where you have kind of the right infrastructure, the right teams in place that you can really start scaling up the business. Then when you start bringing in outside capital, you can get to the better ROI and start scaling up. And then on the flip side, when you're much bigger and your growth is no longer, because we still see a lot of folks doubling their business year over year. But maybe, you've been at this 8, 10 years, you're at a point where your growth is maybe only 10, 15%. You can probably do that with your own cash flow. You're not at a point where you're needing, the capital for that the explosive growth. So it's that sweet spot in the middle that we typically say, this is when your growth is heaviest, this is where you want to scale. If you're talking about startups, you mentioned kind of seed capital, why is that outside capital coming in when you're doing your seed rounds and series A's? It's because you're at a point of explosive growth. So
Yeah.
you're getting the best return on that money because you can have basically that money coming into the business and you can convert that back into more profitable dollars.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So what you're saying, as soon as you more or less sure of your kind of structure, product, logistics, advertisement, conversion, and you want to just pull pull the trigger and get to the next level, this is you definitely need the capital, right? And
Yeah,
if you do it, you,
I was gonna say the other piece of that is if you get capital too soon, you might not do the kind of behaviors that you need to do. Meaning, like when you're hungry, you get more creative. You figure out how to make things work. When you have money, you can throw money at trying to solve the problem, but that's probably not the best way to solve the problem. So a little bit of hunger
yeah,
helps becoming more creative and solving problems are probably the right way.
yeah, I remember the time from us getting VC money for our like IT startup, probably a little bit early, and it was a challenge to not get spoiled, right, at some degree,
Exactly.
and stay creative. Okay, yeah, interesting. And what is the main risk? Like, people usually, like in my case, I took capital for inventory because I see it selling on Amazon and I want to buy more and more, and I need to like double or triple my cash. So, and it's relatively like risky, right? So, um, one day you can get some ban from Amazon, or you can, like it's not selling this season as it was the previous season. So it's a lot of things. So how do you guys measure it? You just take the performance, historical performance, market analysis, or just I'm curious what they're doing.
Yeah, from an underwriting standpoint, because we're looking at really the health of the business. How's the sales performance looking like?
Mhm,
We're looking at, does this person, does this entrepreneur, does this seller know how to, whether they're buying product, whether they're, creating, doing private label and creating their own brand, do they have the right kind of behaviors and mechanisms in place
mhm,
to get a product in, and then find the right audience and put it in front of them and sell it. And can they do it on a repeated or basically repeated process? Meaning, like, can they do it quarter over quarter or year over year? Uh, and the healthier those behaviors are, and can they also come across some of those challenges as you mentioned? You can have a listing that gets suspended. You can have the account gets suspended for a while. How do you bounce back from that? All that is unfortunate when you're, especially if you're selling on Amazon only. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's Amazon world. We're just trying to make a few pennies out of this process. So, you know, if you can go through some of those ups and downs, can you recover? And part of that just kind of shows, how well have you figured out the business, as well as how well have you kind of done the planning and kind of savings along the way. So, like, one of the things I see often is people will funnel every dollar right back into the business.
mhm,
And that, while it sounds like, okay, it's probably the right moves to make, because hey, I can, the more I can put in this business, I can
mhm,
generate more profit, and the faster I can grow. But knowing that it is Amazon, there are going to be challenges along the way. We always recommend start, taking a small percentage, start creating a little rainy day fund, or what I call sleep well at night fund, so that when a problem occurs, you have the resources. If you need to go hire an attorney, consulting firm, whatever, to help, get your account back open, you've got the funds to do it, and it's not impacting the business too much. One of the things I often ask is, how many bad days can you handle? How many bad days can the business handle? And bad days meaning like a days without sale. Is it a matter of days? Is it a matter of weeks, or is it a month? And what I find is most people can't kind of sustain the business more than 30 days, maximum maybe 45 days. So if that's how they're running their business, I've seen businesses, where the listing or the account gets suspended for more than 60 days. and it's really, I mean, they're struggling to keep the business afloat. So if you don't have that cushion built in, and the thing is, the problems gonna, the size of the problem is gonna get bigger. Meaning, like if you're doing $70,000 a year, $7,000 may solve the problem you may face. If you're doing 700,000 or 7 million, you may need 70,000 in that cushion to take care of whatever may come. So if you can think about it from a perspective of, okay, I'm just going to have this percentage allocated for that, so that you start developing that discipline and behavior. So as you keeps, that top line keeps growing, that percentage will keep getting bigger and bigger over time as well.
Okay, interesting approach. So you basically you don't really you definitely measure the sales performance, like this is the main thing, but you also put a lot of effort to analyze the overall like management of the business, right? And yeah, this is a rainy day thing to how long you can survive if everything go like south. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, especially after what 2022, there's a lot of expectations that skewed people's perspective of what can be done with
Mm.
this business and how they can scale it, and I think it kind of led to a lot of probably bad behaviors and the access to capital in ways, and the cost of capital has gone up across the board this year, as well as exits have gone down. There's been a lot of missteps in acquisitions, so there's a lot of kind of resetting a lot of expectations for sellers, especially the first half of this year, where they're like, why can I not get a 7 to 8 multiple on my business? Well, times have changed. So a lot of it is just kind of rethinking, what got you in this business. And we see this oftentimes where, people, this was a side hustle that just kind of grew into something. My side hustle became a multi-million-dollar business, which is kind of phenomenal to think that, here is this kind of industry where people can have a side hustle that's not just a matter of a couple $100, but can literally be, $1 million business side hustle. But these are also folks that don't necessarily have a business background. And you don't need one as deep as you would, because the ecosystem and all the different technologies and resources that are available, it's amazing how fast you can grow with that kind of fundamentals of business. But there comes the point where, as you're scaling up, you need to kind of go back to fundamentals and say, okay, how do I, am I thinking of this as a business? Am I operating as a business? For another example I'll give you is one of the things that I've asked at a couple of different events. I was on a panel and just asked folks, uh, how many of you consider yourself an entrepreneur? And pretty much everybody put their hands up. And then I asked, how many of you consider yourself a CEO? And only a couple of hands went up.
Mm.
And then I asked, which one of those roles is in an org chart? So, CEO is the only one that's actually part of an organizational chart. Entrepreneur is not. But when you're thinking of yourself as a CEO, and then you're thinking of the business as a business, and then that's one seat in the business. You're in the CEO seat, but you may also be wearing the hats of many other seats in that business. And if you can start thinking of it that way, it's like, okay, how do I think of this as a business? Can I look at, what seats am I sitting in, and how do I want to scale up this business? Meaning, if I want to build out a team, where do I want that next person to come in? What's the best ROI for that person coming into the business? What seat do they need to be sitting in? Which seat am I willing to kind of relinquish that control over and say, here, this person probably has some expertise, can do it better than I can. And now you really start thinking about this as a business, and you can really start scaling it up.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue in the Amazon community, because most of the people start as a solopreneur, side hustle, easy, and then it get to some point, it's different mindset, different skill set, different education, and for many people it's a challenge. Like we even have some clients that they can grow to the next level, but they don't have the mindset,
Yeah.
and they're wasting their time. But this is like, this is what they do.
Yeah,
Nice.
and look, there's nothing wrong with it. It just goes back to, what is your journey in the process? Are you looking for an exit? Are you wanting to build a business? Or, what, if I can have this, $1 million, and if I can have a $10,000 a month free cash flow, and if I can live with that, long as I can kind of maintain that for 3 to 5 years, it's covering whatever objectives I have. Whether it's, I want to be able to take this vacation a year, I can cover my college tuition for my kids. whatever those goals are for you, if it's meeting that, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like we're doing business for ourselves, right? It's not
Exactly.
for the numbers, right? It's not for. And talking about all these exits, uh, I believe you talked to like many brands that like trying to do the exit or kind of changing, because we see the big change in all this acquisition industry in the last year or two. It was a hype, and now it's probably gets to the normal. And do you see some trends in the market?
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, I think everyone's very optimistic about 2024. I think as a whole, we saw there was a dip across pretty much all our sellers. We saw that things were down, so everyone's a lot more optimistic about next year. And I see a lot of folks also just really looking at Walmart to say, can I? From what I hear, is like Walmart is the wild wild west. It was like it's Amazon in 2015, 2016 days. There's a lot of things that can be done, and I think a lot of folks are saying, okay, can I start getting, what if I start looking at my business as a portfolio and saying, okay, the lion's share of the business is coming from Amazon now. Can I take 10, 20%? Can I have that coming in from Walmart? And what's the profit levels on that? How's that help me diversify and, basically help me just increase my overall profitability of the business? So I think a lot of folks are a lot more bullish. And granted, a lot of people have been talking about Amazon for a while, or Walmart for a while. I seen that they're, I think, getting a lot, as a Walmart goes. I think they're getting a lot more bullish. Okay, we're gonna really go after this market, and we're gonna, try to take the percentage of market share from Amazon. They're doing it, from the seller side, making it a lot of with the WFS and stuff, adding a lot more to seller resources. But then they're also on the demand side offering. I think this year they did like a 50% off on Walmart Plus to entice more folks to actually start using Walmart Plus. And I think they partnered with Paramount on one of those platforms just so they can have more value add, so that they can start generating more people on the demand side. So I think from a private label side, it's still early. From what I'm hearing around the ad platform, it's got a long ways to go. But for arbitrage and wholesale, I think a lot of people are starting to make that move and saying, okay, I want to, make 2024. Can I get my 20% of my revenue from Walmart platform?
Yeah, we also like my general trend that I see is that Amazon used to be a profit machine 5 6 years ago, and now to generate profit on Amazon is getting harder and harder, and you need to diversify like Walmart, or we also work a lot with bring other like traffic like influencers, TikTok, and all other diversification, because if you depend on Amazon only, it's getting like, yeah, more risky.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is, I just recently read that Temu grew by 1,000% this year. So I think that's another thing to keep an eye on. Is I think it's becoming very quickly the largest marketplace for anything under $20. So I think what you'll see is a lot of private label, if they're not figuring out how to, find new products to launch that are, more costly, meaning that are above the probably 30, $35 range. And I think you'll see more of that going to Amazon, and Temu starts taking over that lower end, which, I think it's good for sellers because hopefully that generates more profitable products. But the other side I see is, I think a lot of them are looking to, how do I start diversifying outside of China, finding new sourcing opportunities in Southeast Asia, near shore in Mexico. So I think there's just a lot of sourcing education and kind of networking that's probably needed for a lot of private label folks, just to kind of get ahead of it, and then looking at kind of their mix of products is, and say, okay, am I, selling a $12 product? Is it going to be still cost effective in 12 to 18 months to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so most of our audience is more in the private label space. Do you have some kind of, recommendations for 2024? This episode will be on air probably in beginning of the January. Like, what is advice you can give?
Yeah, I would say, start planning. That's probably the biggest thing is, as a trend, I've noticed that, like you've got arbitrage folks that their focus is like, and a lot of it's just driven by your buying cycles and your cash conversion cycles. The focus is in the matter of weeks. Wholesale, you see, and they're thinking in months, and private label is thinking in quarters, because it just
Mm,
comes down to the lead times you need to execute on your strategy. So how can you start thinking, 2 quarters ahead, 4 quarters ahead? It's always a challenge, because you can't, in this space, because there's so many variables that it's like you don't want to get too aggressive on anything, because you just don't know. There's too many uncertainties. So part of that, if you have a mix of, okay, I'm selling on Amazon, I'm selling on Walmart, and I've got kind of multi-platform, and maybe if I'm expanding into other countries, if I've got kind of that blend in place, then I can assume more risk. I can take bigger, uh, place bigger orders, start planning for, okay, I can do 5 launches this year, with 5 additional variations of each. And I can start planning. Okay, the other part is, like, especially if you're doing private label, figure out, are you on a journey to an exit or not? And if so, kind of put a stake in the ground and say, okay, this is the time frame. A lot of the folks, and we built this in a platform as well, as you can kind of set not only this year's goal, next year's goal, but you can actually put your exit goal in there and look at, okay, what's the EBITDA I want to have at that point as well. So start thinking, okay, if I want to have an exit in 2026, what's my path to getting there, and what numbers do I want to be hitting, and then what's my strategy to start uh, driving not only the sales, but start looking at the mechanics to actually drive more profitability and have a healthier EBITDA to move towards that exit. So some of those, like you'll see, a lot of folks will have a higher cost of acquisition, and they can probably, if the exit's far enough out, you can do that, because over time you can cut back on that as you get closer to an exit and have a healthier business. But once again, it goes back to planning. So if you can say, I'm looking at 2026 Q1 or 2025, and work backwards to say, okay, how do I get there? And look at kind of the journey along the way. What do I want to be able to do? Um, the better that is. So I think that planning is probably the key point, and looking far enough ahead and pay attention to market conditions. One of the things I always say is, like, in this journey of an exit, there's all different kind of motivations, whether it's you kind of fulfilled your goal, and saying that, okay, I set this outcome, I hit it, I'm ready to kind of get out, or the market conditions are favorable for me to get out at this point. Or maybe it's like, what, I decided to do this, and I took on the US market, but I'm not the person that wants to take this international. So maybe that's the point, that says, okay, well, find somebody that is, and can look at that and say, okay, I can take this across the globe, and that's the right time for you to exit. Or maybe it's there's something you're seeing coming down the pipe, but you don't have the deep enough pockets to tackle that, but the potential buyer may. So maybe that's a better alignment to say, okay, well, this person's got the network, or they've got the funds to take on this type of a problem, and once that problem's solved, the brand can really explode. But maybe it's not you. So just figure out what is that right motivation for you to get out, and when is that point in time for you.
Okay, thank you. So I took your advice in like three main pieces. Have a clear goal. You want to exit. You want to keep it growing. Or what's your objectives? Then do quarterly planning, because this is a key to grow, and diversify. Right. So this is the three main pieces that
There you go.
I think it works for every business, even for our agency. Is more or less the same. But, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it comes down to thinking of it as a business, and part of that is that mindset switch. Okay, am I ready to think of this as a business, or do I want to continue this as a side hustle? And the moment it's like when you take, if you're in the VC space, or in the startup space, the moment you take a dollar from the outside, you take VC dollars. It's a different journey than bootstrapping. So you have to be ready for everything that comes with that decision. So same thing as you say, okay, I'm changing this from a side hustle to a business. Now I'm on a new trajectory and I need to start operating that way.
Okay, amazing. Thanks a lot, Oz. It was amazing conversation. I personally learned a lot. I hope our audience as well. So, what is the best way to reach out to you if someone wants to?
Yep, you can find us at runviably.com as the quickest way to go to the platform. Um, and if you go to the social handles, it's all Run Viably, at Run Viably. You can find us in pretty much everywhere from uh, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, all those.
We'll put all the links below, so it will be easy for you. Okay, thank you again, and have an amazing 2024.
You too, Oleg. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you.